are going to be talking today. So my name is Carrie McAiney, this is Sherry Dupuis, and we've been co-leading the Partnerships in Dementia Care Alliance, or PiDC Alliance, since 2010. We do have a lot of slides to get through, so we're going to do just a quick introduction. And the presentation today draws on the work of the PiDC Alliance. Okay. So in terms of the objectives for our workshop, we're hoping that by the end of the session that you'll have had a chance to learn and engage with the discovery process of appreciative inquiry, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that is on the next slide. We'll have you start to work on a discovery plan, have an opportunity to share with each other some high-point, fulfilling care experiences, and then start to identify some of the common themes related to what an ideal future might look like in long-term care. She's quicker than me. So our PiDC Alliance has relied on two approaches, so participatory action research and appreciative inquiry. So participatory action research, with that, what we want to do is really involve diverse groups of individuals in all stages of our research. So that includes individuals living with dementia, other residents, family members, and different types of staff. And so we want to involve people because that's how we're going to get be more likely to have good quality of care at the end. And then we use appreciative inquiry, which is a 5-step process. And the focus really is on looking at things in a positive way, appreciating and building on the strengths of individuals and organizations. Dawn is the first phase, and in the last Culture Change Exchange, that's what we focused on in our talk. So today we're going to focus in on the discovery phase.
Discovery is actually one of my favorite parts about appreciative inquiry and culture change, because it's really about finding out what's actually working really well. Daniela talked about how she worked to find out what people valued in the organization. So it's about really discovering the strengths. There's not a long-term care home that we know of that actually isn't already doing some wonderful things. And so it's building on those strengths that is really important to culture change. So it's not really trying to land somewhere new, although you will get somewhere new if culture change is successful, but it's trying to see things anew and see, perhaps more importantly, seeing things that you didn't actually see before, or seeing those things in a very different way. So the purpose of discovery is to find out what's happening when dementia caring and supporting living is actually at its best. So finding out what matters to people, what they value within your communities, and then it's about discovery really should be a really fun time. It should be an exciting time. It should be where people, I could feel the excitement by the Chartwell people and others who were presenting here today about all the wonderful things that they're doing. And discovering those and sharing those should be a really exciting time. And it's important that it is exciting because that should create the momentum that is needed to move the culture change process forward. Right? And so the reason we really wanted to go with appreciative inquiry is that when we were starting out with our culture change work, it tended to get into the problems, all the problems that are faced that we face in long-term care and dementia care in the community, wherever we work. And that was very paralyzing. It did nothing to get people excited about moving forward. And so what we love about appreciative inquiry is really starting with the good things that people are already doing. So the way that we do, and many who use appreciative inquiry do when they're doing discovery, is developing a plan for gathering the Highpoint stories from as diverse a group of people as possible, doing the work of collecting those stories. So Daniela had the talk to people, she had the focus groups and the working groups, and other groups have used other ways. And then actually working together to analyze those shared stories, to identify what in those stories tell us, or what those stories tell us about what needs to be in place. Because the good things that we're already doing tell us a lot about where we need to go do more of in the future. So I'm going to turn it to Carrie now. We're going to talk a little bit about each of these phases in discovery.
So what is involved in developing a discovery plan? So the first two questions that you need to ask are what and what for. So what is really the focus of your discovery? So what is it that you want to focus in on? And when you're thinking about that what, again, to be in line with appreciative inquiry is to state that what in a positive way rather than in a negative way. So really focus in on that positive. And then it's thinking about the what for. And really that's the objectives. So where is it that we want to be at the end of this discovery process? So it might be answering the question, by the end of this phase, we will, and then we can answer that question. So we thought we could give you an example just to make this a little bit more concrete. And so this was adapted from one of our culture change processes. And a team that we were working with had determined that they wanted to focus on their what was how do we develop and sustain compassionate relationships with everybody that's involved in the caring context. So individuals living with dementia, other residents, families, staff, or team members. So how do we develop those relationships? And they recognized that they were already, as Sherry mentioned, already doing a lot of things really well. So we wanted to build on those things that they were doing well. They then set the what for, the objectives. So they identified that they needed to know, what needed to be in place in order to develop those good, strong relationships. They wanted to have a specific focus on having and developing relationships with care partners. So meaning family members, friends, and other individuals. And then having good information on how to develop strong teams. So that was their what and their what for. Then there are a few other questions, once you have the what and what for answered, a few other questions to consider. So who do you need to consider to engage, who do you need to engage in order to get a wide range of diversity and experience? So you want to think about all of the different groups and to be as diverse as possible in that approach. Where is this discovery going to take place? Are you working with one particular organization, one site in an organization? Are you involving folks that are outside of your organization? So where is that discovery going to take place? Then the question of when. So when will it take place and how much time are we going to dedicate to the discovery process? And then how, which is really key. Because we want that diversity of opinion, we want to hear from a lot of different individuals, we may need to adapt and think about creative ways to gather that information. So how are we going to do that? So this is a little template that we've developed, and sometimes the groups that we are working with will use this. And it's just a helpful way to track information, right? To record and help to keep everybody on the same page.
So we thought that what we could do today is to get you started in developing a discovery plan. So on your tables, you should find a developing the discovery plan note page. And so what we'd like you to do is to work at your tables, either in pairs or with everyone at your table, and actually answer the two. We're going to focus on 2 questions rather than all the questions because of lack of time. But what we'd like you to do is use the example of creating and sustaining compassionate relationships for all, and then determine who it is that you want to gather those Highpoint stories from. thinking creatively, and then identify exciting creative strategies that you would use to gather those Highpoint stories. Now, some of you have already been through a discovery process, so draw on your own experiences to share those so we can hear about those. And those of you that haven't, think about what it is that you might do. So we're going to give you about 5 minutes to do this, and then we'll come back and share a little bit. We could just share a few ideas about who you would want to gather your Highpoint stories from, and then maybe what we could do is have you identify one group that you really feel that you want to get high stories from, and then what strategy or strategies you identified to go with that one group, and then we'll build on that.
Well, we listed these things. We would certainly hear from residents, from staff members, team members, family, volunteer, and community leaders. Those would be some.
Great.
We identified the same type of groups of people, and we thought about how we could engage them and get those Highpoint stories, and we thought about some of the same things that we would normally do, like small groups, etc., and surveys and workshops and councils. And then we kind of tried to think of something fun and something that might be meaningful as well. And we thought, what if we collected those Highpoint stories, and the goal was to create a book or a scrapbook or something that we have something to hold and read and be proud of, and that there was something at the end of it.
Excellent.
Great. We talked about opportunities for one-on-one conversations, just brief moments of asking a resident, maybe, what are you enjoying today? And getting a sense of what's working. Or for team members, to ask to share some times that you felt good about the relationship you have with these residents and the interactions that you've had. Or maybe volunteers might be able to share a time that they felt inspired in their work and knew something right was happening here. Same with family members.
Great, thank you.
This is a collective effort.
Yay.
One of the things that I would consider doing would be have role playing.
Oh, yes.
You could have the person, a very engaging person, you would know the personality, and you say, now, I want you to act out a scene of when you were a little girl. What do you remember? Or when you were a teenager, what were the highlights when you were dating? That kind of thing?
Yeah.
I think all of it involves not only a hearing process, but a listening process. And I remember having a conversation with Paul Brown in our suite one day, and he was saying, people often hear, but they don't listen.
Yeah.
And there could be some very intriguing stories. You could learn a lot about a person, just by listening to them, and sometimes just by observing also.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing, those of you who did. We find every culture change journey is very different, so we've used a number of different ways to find out the best of what is in our culture change journeys. The care profile questionnaires actually were originally developed by Michael Nolan, who developed the census framework and relationship-centered care. We actually worked with him, or got permission from him, to actually rework the questionnaires because we didn't think they were relational. So we've actually adapted the questionnaires so that they are truly, we worked with one of our culture change coalitions to actually adapt the questionnaire so they actually are truly relational. So we have used those in some homes, but some homes don't really want to use questionnaires. They're questionnaire to death. So we've used, and this is particularly helpful with people living with dementia and those people who do not communicate orally anymore, is we used a lot of arts-based work. We use theater a lot, but we also use visual arts to try and get people to express. We've used collages where we have residents create collages about what they value most about their day-to-day lives. One-on-one interviews, small focus groups, and huddles. We've gone to huddles a lot conversation cafes and learning circles, informal conversations, and contests. The more fun you can make it, like creating the book or having contests that people actually do, is gets more people really involved.
So once you have your discovery plan, the next phase is to start to share and collect Highpoint stories. So there's a number of different questions that could be used to help you with soliciting these stories. So we've just listed a few here, and
They're on your tables as well.
yeah, because guess what? We're going to have you start to do some of this work. We much prefer you doing things than us just up here talking. So what we'd like you to do is get a partner, or there may be chances, I guess, to work in threes as well. But we'd like one partner to select one of the questions and ask it to the other partner. And then have them share their responses, their Highpoint stories. And you have some sheets on the tables where you can start to document those stories. So we'll give you about the first partner about 5 minutes to do that. And then what we'd like you to do is to switch roles. So the partner that was interviewed can select a different question and ask the first partner that question, and then start to document or record the other individual's Highpoint story. Okay? So you'll each have about 5 minutes to spend, and we'll let you know when the first 5 minutes is up.
Good, 10 after. Yeah. I wonder if anyone would be willing to share what they found about the Highpoint story that they listened to and heard. What did you find out? Is there anything that stood out, excited you?
Well, I interviewed Ivan, and I asked him what he enjoyed most in life after he retired. And he said volunteering.
Yeah.
And especially volunteering for Communities in Bloom, which is a provincial, national, and international program. Each of us judged. He was chair of judging. And then I said, what aspects particularly did you enjoy? And he said the privilege of visiting different parts of Canada, the US, Scotland, England, and Ireland, and assessing the accomplishments of the sectors in a community, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jane is a beautiful storyteller, so I'll just start with that. So I won't do her story justice. But what struck me most about the comments Jane made is that she used the line, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jane, said, I look forward to it as much as I hope the residents do. So there's that mutual enjoyment of a group that she facilitates at the long-term care facility that she supports. So it's that, again, to the relational piece, is we see so often in long-term care task, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to go and do this group with residents. I'm going to go and give this resident a bath. But that comment really struck me, that there was that mutual enjoyment in a process that takes place weekly.
Beautiful.
So I interviewed Al, and I asked him about what gives life to his organization when he saw it at his best. And he described the leadership process and the planning sessions for designing the greenhouse project in Rochester. And the things that really made it stand out for him were all the relational aspects of culture change that we've been talking about today and throughout culture change. It's the mutual respect amongst the leadership team. It's the openness to different ideas. It's the common value-based passion for enhancing quality of life for older adults. And it's healthy debate as well to challenge thinking. So all of those values, and being able to have them in an environment where the conversation was healthy and there was a high level of trust, made for a high point for Al.
I'll just share the Carol story too. While we were in the middle of this, and it was because we had done culture change through Eden for years. We had gotten a lot of those issues, the dysfunctions among our team out before we started this. And my personal guru from Eden Alternative, Carol Endy, was in town for a retreat. And she came and spent a day with us during an all-day planning session. And she just sat there and she saw this dialogue and this mutual knowing and respect going around the table. And at one point she leaned over and she goes, "This is an amazing group of people you got here." And we got through the whole day. And she'd never been through St. John's. And I said, "Oh, geez, we never even toured. Do you want to go see the home?" And she goes, "I tour nursing homes all the time. I know what they look like." She said, "I saw what I needed to see in this meeting today. I know when the leadership is doing this,
Yeah.
I know what's going on up there."
Yeah.
So that was a powerful thing, I thought.
Yeah, thank you. What we do then is we work to analyze the shared stories, to really learn from them, to see what they're telling us about where we need to be in the future, what we need to do more of in the future. And we've done this in a number of different ways. Sometimes our groups have decided we all want to read all the stories on our own and then come back and talk about what we read. And other teams have said, no, we want to work together in the same room and sort of read the stories together, either in small groups or as in larger groups. Usually it's in smaller groups. And then what we would usually have them do is to write down key ideas on Post-it notes that stick out to them about what the stories tell them about some of these things. So what do the stories tell us about what's working well in the organization? What do the stories tell us about what people are most proud of, what they value, or what matters to them? What do the stories tell us about what is happening when things are going really well? So it's not just about finding out what's working well. We want to know, we want to delve deeper into what is actually going on when those things are going well. And what do these stories tell us about what an ideal future might look like? What an ideal caring experience might look like for different groups? And we were going to have you do some of this analysis, but we're getting a sense of we're ready to end the day. So I think so I've got some head sorta. No, let's keep going. Let's talk a bit based on the stories that you heard. How do they help us learn about what our ideal future might look like for dementia care, long-term care, based on the stories you heard?
Just hearing your name, Jen's story, and watching her face when she was telling it was really great, because we were a bit like that, but when she started to talk about this person's smile, was all the energy came back.
Yeah.
And it was just about someone who came in who was really anxious and just really frightened, and really grabbing onto people just to make a connection and actually injured someone. And to work through with one-on-one support and in the space of a week and a half to actually see the same person face relaxed and for the very first time have a smile and the sense of amazing achievement. And yeah, that gave this person was, so how can we have more of that?
Yeah.
Understand, have more people who are alert to that, who are noticing that, hire people who care that much. And it was one-on-one support that got it across the line. So using that, the human contact and not pills or interventions, just that human contact and listening and connection that brought that about. So how can we facilitate more of that in the ideal future? Mm-hmm. More time for just looking, listening, and just being with.
Yeah, great.
So I think it underscores the kind of values that underpin what makes life good in those Highpoint stories, right? It's not just, you usually what I heard is a description of the story, but then a bit of a kind of, and the reason this was so important and Highpoint for me was because of the mutual respect and the trust so it actually draws out the values that make for life at its very best.
Yeah. So throughout our processes, what we usually end up with is a whole bunch of those values on Post-it notes, and often there's a lot of values that actually go together. And then those values become sort of aspirations or themes or whatever you want to call them, visions for the future. Somebody talked about the will, desired will, or
Willed future.
willed future, that's right. So they become what then you start to put a plan together for and dream about, okay, how can we do more of that, and how can we actually get to that willed future?
So what we wanted to do today was just to let you practice with a couple of the exercises that we've been able to use in our culture change processes, just so you have a chance to see what they might be like, and to think about whether that might be something that you could use or would want to use in your own organizations. So these resources and others for each phase in the appreciative inquiry process are found on our website. So you can go to the Partnerships and Dementia Care Alliance, and there is the Culture Change Living Toolkit, little button, and then you can go to any phase, and there are these and other resources that are available to you. So just in wrapping things up, we have a couple of recommendations that Kate asked us to put together. So I think, first of all, it's ensuring that we have a variety and diversity of voices and stories that are included. And we've talked a lot about that today. The more we're able to hear from different groups, so persons living with dementia, other residents, volunteers, family members, team members, we're going to better understand what are the things that are happening and where people want to go, and that will help us to really drive things forward in a much more successful way. Secondly, like everything, good things take time, so really taking the time to put that discovery plan together, to think about how you're going to engage those different groups and different voices. And then hopefully to have fun, to be creative, listen to your team members, take some inspiration from Cammie, right? Really have fun and be creative in going through this process. As Sherry talked about, this is really what can give momentum and life to embarking on the next phases of your culture change process. So really try to build that right from this stage.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing that I'll just leave you with, in a couple of the culture change processes we've worked on, people have gone out to do the Highpoint Story interviews and actually found that people were just giving them all the negative. And this will happen. So, because there's a lot of that, right? And so what actually that brought up for us was really thinking about, okay, so could some responses be should you go out to gather a Highpoint story and all you get is the negative? How can we turn that around? So we have actually developed a sheet of responses that you can use when you're gathering the Highpoint story, or like things like, so what does that tell you about where you'd like this place to be, or what you need for a caring experience? So what does that, so it's not about dismissing the negative, because it is happening for people. And we need to validate that, or we need to understand that. But we need to find a way in getting those Highpoint stories for them to think about, okay, based on what that story you just told me, what does that tell us about what needs to be in place for you to have a really ideal caring experience, whether you're a staff person or a resident or citizen or a volunteer or family member. And turn it around. And we found that those responses actually worked really well. So just one other thing to think about. And we might have time for one or two questions if anyone has the energy to actually raise their arm.
Oh, somebody online?
Yeah, there's a couple people online with a couple of comments for you that we'd like to share.
So we have one comment from someone who says this is a much needed change and it makes being in long-term care very exciting. And Tracy would like to tell you, first of all, she loves your necklace.
Oh.
And secondly, actually,
you have made my day, Tracy.
they loved your presentation so much, they say that they're already cutting and pasting and making notes for that change.
Oh, thank you. Please share the Highpoint stories with me so that we can share them. Because we find people, when we do this, that people want to know what other people are doing, which is what we gain so much from coming to these culture change exchanges, is it gives us these wonderful stories of what Chartwell is doing and Schlegel is doing and Cammie and her group at Pinewood is doing and all the other, like those are examples that help people to see that this can actually happen because other people are doing it. So please share, Tracy.
Well, in cultural change, it obviously means that they're going to, it's a movement, I believe, that's going to take some time.
Yeah.
But being human, I guess we often resist change.
We do.
And I sat into a conference or a workshop a couple of weeks ago in which they were dealing with, as you age, the changes of which you may have to face. And the lady who was presenting it made a very interesting observation, I thought. And she said, you know, it's not that you resist change, but what it is a fear of what you're losing. And sometimes we get very set in our ways and overlook the things that should be changed because we fear of what we're giving up.
Yeah. I think fear is enormous in culture change. It's because we don't, the beauty about culture change is we don't really know where we're going to end up, right? And that can be really scary for a lot of people who right now know exactly what their day looks like, right? They get in, they have to have so-and-so bathed by 8 so they can get down for breakfast, and then they have whatever, right? So that can be very scary for sure. So thank you. I think that's one thing that we have to be very aware of as we're working with all different groups through culture change is the fear. Embracing that fear, trying to understand, you know, what the worst is that could happen, and having those conversations. Yeah, so thank you for that.